Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Pancho Show. I'm your host, Francisco Lopez, also known as Pancho. So, for this episode, I want to tell you a really cool story. As we're going through our entrepreneurial journey, and as you're going through your life's journey, actually, in general, you're going to encounter some people that are total assholes, that are totally bad, that are going to try to put you down, try to bring you down. But on the other side, sometimes you're gonna meet amazing people that are just gonna help you level up and come out of holes that you may have felt that you were never gonna get yourself out of. I've been fortunate enough in my life to have encountered a lot of really special people in my life that have trusted in me and helped me out and have really had faith in whatever it is that I'm trying to accomplish and things like that, that have really stepped up to the plate and allowed me to bring a lot of my things and visions and goals into reality. But I want to tell you a story of one of the ones that's, I think, the most special out of all of them. And the reason why I thought about this story, and I want to share it with you, because we're opening up a new restaurant. And as we're going through the process of opening up this new restaurant, I started remembering back in the day when I opened up my other place, Tropifruit. I've had that place open now for going on 9 years. And yeah, it'll actually be 9 years in about a month. And when we opened up that place, we were in a bad point in our life. I literally had no money. I think my bank account, when I signed the lease agreement for that place, my bank account was overdrawn like $200 and my credit score was in the 400s. It was kind of a miracle in itself that I was able to pull that off. But before that ever happened, something else happened shortly after that, that's the story that I want to share with you. But before that even happened, I had gotten to a point in my life that I was literally homeless. So the economy had been in a really, really horrible downward spiral for a few years. As much as I tried to make ends meet, buying and selling cars and selling real estate and working at a car dealership, I kept struggling and struggling and struggling to the point that I had lost everything. I had sold everything that I possibly could, including all my furniture and video game consoles. I remember selling like a video game console for cheap just to try to get some money to be able to eat. And it got to a point one day that we only had like $30 in our pocket, and that was it, and no money coming in. However, and this is where the story kind of gets good. I got to a point that I really, really needed to find a way out. I really, really needed to find a position in which I had to level up. I had to do something about it because I was sick and tired of being in the hole that I was in. I was living at my parents' house at the time. I had moved to TJ to live with my parents because, like I said, I had nothing. And obviously, you have the support of some family members and things like that. But I hated myself for it. I hated myself because ever since I had left my house when I was 19 years old to get married, I had bought a condo. I was doing things right. So to have gone from that to never asking anybody for help to having to live in my parents' house with my 3 kids was just a bad thing for me. On top of it, having to cross the border every day at 5 a.m. with my oldest son, who was at the time like maybe 6 years old, sitting in the back seat sleeping because it was 5 a.m. and I had to cross the border to get him to school, it just made me feel like shit. You know, it's not something that I want anybody to go through because it really, really brings you down. However, I remember one day I drop off my kid at school and I'm thinking to myself, I got to do something. Something has to change. And I see this sign that said for rent. And this was for an apartment. And I was like, okay, I got to move back over here. Whatever it takes, I have to make this happen. So I go check out this apartment, and it was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in the East Lake area over in Chula Vista. If you guys are familiar with the area, it's like the older part of East Lake, the original part of East Lake, where there's like a man-made lake. It's a beautiful community. This was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath apartment on the bottom floor. And I call the number, and the guy is there, and he says, you know what, I'm here right now cleaning up the place. A tenant that has been with me for about 10 years just moved out, so come check it out. Apologize for the cell phone ringing in the background, but who cares? I'm going to keep on telling my story because it's a good one. So I go and I meet up with this guy, and I'm looking at the condo, and I'm madly in love with it because I'm thinking, wow, this is beautiful. It's in a great area. It fits our family's needs. I can definitely make this work for my 3 boys, my wife, and myself. Now, the only thing I have to figure out is how to pay for it, right? So I tell him, I'm like, you know what, I'm really interested. What's the rent? He says, $1,400 a month. To me, that was a super steal of a deal because $1,400 a month for a 3-bedroom apartment at the time was nothing. And I asked him, why so cheap? He says, well, it's the same rent that I was charging my other tenant for the last 10 years. I just don't want to raise it. I want somebody that's going to take good care of it. I want somebody that's going to be here for a long time and that it really, really takes good care of this place. So I was like, you know what? That's awesome because that in itself tells you that you're dealing with somebody that's definitely not greedy, right? So I tell him, you know what do I need to do? I'm interested. He says, well, I already have a few applicants. Here's the application. He hands me an application, and I look at it, and I remember feeling like, fuck, like, what am I going to do with this? If I fill this out, I have no job. I had no money coming in, and my credit score was shot to hell. And I wasn't going to ask anybody to co-sign or anything like that, so I was like, what do I do? So I tell him, I'm like, you know what? I'm really interested. If I fill this application, you're not going to find anything that's going to want you to lease it to me. However, if you'll allow me to, I'll give you my word as a man that no matter what happens, if you allow me the opportunity to rent this place, which, by the way, you would have to give me maybe a couple of weeks to be able to pay you half of the deposit and then another month for the other half before I'm able to cover that. If you allow me to move in on those terms, I'll go ahead and rent it for a long period of time, and I will never, ever be late on the rent. And I promise I'll take super good care of it. He looks at me, and he had this face of like that's weird, you know? Like, he didn't really understand it. And I explained to him, I'm in a slump. I'm in a bad situation in my life. My credit score is bad, and I don't have a job yet. But if you give me this opportunity, I will have a job by the end of the week, and I will do whatever it takes to make this happen. He says, let me think about it. Give me till tomorrow, he says. I'm like, okay. I go out, and obviously I'm feeling like crap. I'm disappointed. I'm like, crap, this place is beautiful. This would be so good for my family. And because I'm an idiot, and because I've screwed up, and because my mindset hasn't been right, I haven't been pushing as hard as I should have to be able to get myself out of this slump. By the way, something very important that I need to share with you about this whole story. The only reason why I was in a slump the way I was, and the only reason why my bank account was empty and that I had no money coming in and that I was in that total disaster zone of a life was because of myself. It had nothing to do with the bad economy. It had nothing to do, there was plenty of people at that same time that were thriving in business. There was multiple people that were able to find a way to overcome the obstacles and be good. I let myself get caught up in the negativity of the media, of what's happening on my surroundings, and it was okay for me to blame the situation rather than myself. The moment I started taking on the blame and really understanding that it was my fault that I was in, there was a way that I could do something about it. One of the reasons why I was doing so bad is because I had promised myself that I was going to get out of the car business and I was never going to have anything to do with it ever again. However, at that moment, when I talked to this guy, I figured, well, whatever it takes. And if I need to go back to the car business, which at that time I had been like kind of dreading, at least I'll make a paycheck, and I'll do something. So the end of the day comes by, and I'm really frustrated with myself, and he hasn't called me. He said that he needed another night. And I just called him up and I said, you know what? I'm sorry, I just can't wait. I'm like kind of desperate here, and I want to make you an offer. I said, I know you're okay with only the $1,400 a month, but I'd be willing, because I understand that I'm a little bit of a bigger risk, I'm willing to offer you a little bit more. Even though an apartment of that size and in that area would probably rent for $1,800, I said, I'll give you $1,500. I would offer you more, but I don't want to overcommit either. And he says, you know what? I appreciate the extra $100. And regardless of that, I was going to call you to let you know that I'm willing to take a risk on you. but I will accept the $100, he said. I said, okay, great. They always say in negotiations, the first one to talk loses. Well, that was me. Although it wasn't a loss because still a heck of a deal. Besides, this person was an incredible human. I'm not going to share his name or anything because he's a very private guy and everything. But anyways, what ended up happening, he says, okay, I'll rent it out to you. How much time do you need for the deposit and all that stuff? So we worked something out. It was like the beginning of March. By March 9th, I started working at a Volkswagen dealership. And I decided, okay, screw it. I'm going to go back to selling cars. At least I know that in 2 weeks I'll have a paycheck. And I go in there, and it was the 9th of March when I started working there. By the 31st of March, I had sold 21 cars. And that equated to almost $10,000 in commissions and income. It blew my mind how stupid I had been for all this time that because I was so stuck in my own ego and because I was so pissed off at what had happened at the other store, I was letting everybody down in my life, including my parents, my kids, myself. So I said, never again will I let that happen. Next month, I sold another 20 cars. Next month after that, I sold another 20 cars. And guess what happened? All of a sudden, money starts coming in. I'm paying everything on time, and I'm being able to pay this guy on time. But here's the biggest thing. This guy took a risk. Nobody else, who else do you know that would rent an apartment to somebody that bad credit, no job, deposit's going to be late, all that stuff. Yet he saw something, and he allowed me the opportunity to prove it. So that was awesome in itself. And that could probably end this story here. But check out what happens afterwards. This is what'll blew my mind away. About 6 months after I start working, so it's March, April, May, June, July, August. Yeah, about 4 or 5 months after I rented this place and I start working there, I bump into some people that were about to let go of this one restaurant called Tropifruit. It was bankrupt. It wasn't doing well. And I overheard the conversation. I'm like, oh man, I've always liked that little business. But I was not doing good financially. My credit score was still bad, obviously. I still hadn't recovered because I was still paying off debt and debt and debt and debt. I still didn't have a whole lot of money in my bank account. But I knew I had a job where I was generating money. And I figured, you know what, I'll take the risk. I think it's one of those things that I had nothing to lose, so who cares, right? So I bought the restaurant. I managed to take over it. And I'm not going to go into details of everything that happened in terms of that. But I can tell you this. A lot of friends let me borrow credit cards, cash, just to be able to get started and remodel the place a little bit. My uncle let me borrow his Home Depot card so that I could buy some paint and repaint. There was a lot of cool stuff that happened. And one of these days, I'll tell the whole story about that. But I want to continue telling you the story about this guy, the guy that had, my landlord, the guy that had rented this place to me without even having a job. I call him up and I say, hey, guess what? I said, I'm buying a restaurant. He says, oh, that sounds great. Very cool. I said, well, I need a little bit of help. I have the money right here in my hand, ready to pay you the rent and ready to make this happen and everything like I told you. I give you my word that I will always pay you on time. However, if you allow me to, and if you're 100% okay with it, if you would allow me to be late 15 days on the rent, it would help me out a lot because then I could use that money to cover the first months and the deposit for the new location for that restaurant because I was transferring the lease over. He says, well, tell me a little bit more about the restaurant. I said, well, it's like a juice bar and we're going to be selling tortas and this and that. He's like, oh, that sounds exciting. Do you feel confident that you're going to make this work? I said, I'm 100% confident that I will do whatever it takes to make this work. And my wife has my back and she's going to be helping out and everything. And he says, okay, you know what? I think you're going to do very well with that business. I have a good feeling about that. I'll tell you what, he says, don't worry about the rent until you get the place up and running. I was like, what? He says, don't worry about the rent until you are ready to go and you've already gotten the place up and running. If it takes you a couple of months, that's not a problem with me. It blew my mind. I tell the story right now, I swear I'm getting goosebumps again. And I kind of get teary-eyed. I mean, it's unbelievable when I heard those words. And I still call him, by the way, every 2-3 months just to say thank you. This has happened 9 years ago. I literally call him every 2 or 3 months, and I say, hey, I just wanted to call you and say, hey, thank you so much for everything that you did. Sometimes I think he might even be annoyed by it. But I still feel like a need to do that. And at the end of the day, what ended up happening is I took his offer. I said, okay, cool. I managed to get that restaurant open. That restaurant has really, really done well for itself in the last 8 years. It's kept growing and growing and growing. It has allowed me to employ today. We have, I believe, like 11 or 12 employees, which all earn a living thanks to it. My parents are part of it, and they are also earning an income from it. My wife and I have been able to have it so that we can use it as a source for emergencies and things like that of income. It's been such a blessing. It would have never come into fruition. It would have never existed and been possible to happen if it wasn't for my friends that let me borrow and had faith that I would be able to pay them back in 90 days, whatever money they let me borrow, because that was what I promised them. And this guy that allowed me to just, and literally took a humongous risk on everything. At the end of the day, here's the message that I want you to take away from this little story. When you're on your journey in life, whenever somebody's doing something negative and bad and talking shit and maybe not being the most positive influence, get away from them as quickly as you possibly can. Ignore them completely, because the right people are there. There are amazing human beings out there that do believe in you. They do trust you. They have faith in whatever it is that you're doing, and just be good in general so that you can attract those people, and you have this circle of people that actually like, love, trust you, and everything is going to open up. It's incredible how some people are people that you've known for a while. Some people, in my case, some of the people that let me borrow their credit cards and stuff to be able to open up that business were people that at one point in my life I had been able to help as well. So it was kind of like a payback type of situation. Or like this gentleman, people that you've never even met in your life that all of a sudden see something in you. Or they're simply so kind-hearted that are willing to take risks on people that they don't even know just because. Those people are out there. People like that do exist. So go into things and take certain risks and do things in your life knowing that there are people out there that will support you. Knowing that if you just maintain that positive vibe, and here's another important thing. Don't let those people down. Super important. When people open up their hearts like that, and in some cases their wallets like that, do the right thing and don't mess it up. Do whatever it takes to live up to those expectations, because if they believe in you, you better believe in yourself enough to be able to do whatever it is that you need to do to pay them back and to get it back. In my case, if this gentleman ever calls me up and asks me for anything, you bet your ass I will do whatever it takes. I'll bend over backwards for him to do whatever it takes that I can help him out. But on top of that, I believe that there's also a thing called paying it forward. I am the biggest believer, and after that, even more so, that if I'm ever in a situation that I can help somebody out like that I can see that they're willing to get their life in order and better, and I'm in a position that I can help in any way, shape, or form, I will take that risk. It's a way that the whole world, the humanity just gets better, I believe. So I challenge you to, number one, really believe that it's possible to meet amazing humans like this in your life. And number two, to be that amazing human for somebody else. So if you can be in a position that you can help somebody in any way, shape, or form, please do so. Because you have no idea how much it might reflect and change somebody's life for the better. Those moments in that year, that whole year 2010 was an enormous year of transformation for myself. It was a tremendous year in terms of turning everything around, doing a complete 180 in my life. And ever since then, everything has just gone better and better and better and better and better. And it's a journey. Hashtag Pancho's journey. It just keeps going and going and going. And as long as you maintain that positive attitude, understanding that even if shit happens, everything is going to be okay. Things always happen, not necessarily for a reason, but whatever you interpret them to be, you can make it into something good. Therefore, from now on, like I said, just make sure to do the right thing. Be a good person. Try to help others. Try to influence somebody's life for the better, because you never know how much of an impact those little details can have. For this guy, he risked maybe 3,000, 4,500 in bad rents. Maybe a bad situation in which he's all upset because he has to kick me out with the sheriff if I didn't pay and I didn't want to leave. I don't know. But the guy was good enough and kind-hearted enough to just take the risk. Every now and then, take a risk on people, because you never know when that person might be in a bad place, but they're actually in that bad place, not necessarily because they're bad people. Maybe they're just in a bad position in their life at that point. Anyways, I hope you like this message and this little story. Again, I'm going to share with you a few more stories about this whole time in my life, because I think there's a lot of really cool lessons there. And if you think it's a valuable story, and if you found it entertaining and you thought it was cool, please like, comment, share. Let me know what you think, and let everybody know to come in and subscribe. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast or the YouTube channel so that you can see the future videos coming out as they come along. All right? Thank you so much for watching, like always. I love you very much. Have a great day.